Good morning, guys. I got Mark Needham with me. Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing excellent.
Good deal. Good deal.
Thanks for having me, man.
I enjoy having as many different types of people as I can. While we're at it, let everybody know what you do and why you're on TikTok.
So, I guess the best thing I would call myself is a purveyor of ideas, of strange ideas. I like to pose as many thought-provoking, open-minded ideas that lead to better philosophy, better conduct for people in society, and just a more interesting adventure of life for all of us. It dives into philosophy, spirituality, religion, science. If it's interesting and I think it can move us forward as a people, I talk about it.
Yeah, because I agree with you. Some of the stuff you said was intriguing or at least thought provoking. I think
Yeah,
what you caught me on, though, was you were ranting on something to do with ending the Fed. That
yeah,
seems to be a popular one. It seems like an easy, soft target. What got you
yep,
on that rant? What got you started on talking about that?
yeah. That's a great question, and I love this story. At some point, I was thinking about interest charged to nations from private corporations. So I started looking into all the stuff that was happening with Abraham Lincoln, with Andrew Jackson, with JFK, where they were trying to bring back the standard where America would produce their own currency as a closed system. And the thought never occurred to me before that a nation could print its own money and then give it to the people, and then they just used it to facilitate commerce. The only purpose of the money then is creating a standard of value. So I don't have to argue with you over how much three goats is worth compared to chickens. I can just give you the money and you know how much it costs.
Well, not only that, but it
So
becomes very standard across the spectrum of states too. So a double cheeseburger
exactly,
at McDonald's basically costs almost exactly the same from California to Connecticut and everywhere in between, which
exactly.
allows commerce and just value and everything to stay relatively calm.
Yeah, yeah. And so bartering's fun, right? To argue with somebody at a marketplace if that's your thing. But obviously, we needed to cut some time so we can get things done. So that made sense to me. But then I found out that the Federal Reserve is basically a private organization. And for 100 years, by force, by violence, by coercion, they took over the right to print money. America used to print its own money and there was no interest. So then I thought about this, and this is where it really bugged me out. If you borrow $1 million from Peter, the banker, and he's the only person you can get money from, and he charges you 10% interest over 10 years, you're going to owe him 1.1 million in 10 years. Where are you getting that point 1? It doesn't exist. And that's where my mind really got blown. I'm like, oh, this is a setup.
Yeah, none
This
of it
is a
exists. If you think
shakedown.
about it, hold on. Technically, none of it
Yeah,
exists. Yeah.
exactly. And it was never real money to begin with. It didn't have value. It was literally used as a receipt or a coupon. And then the bank's like, no, no, this is worth something, these stupid pieces of paper. And you're going to owe me more. And you're going to have to borrow from me to pay me more. And then you're going to have to pay me more on that. I'm like, oh, wait a second. This is a scam. Like, this is a legitimate scam. And so it blew my mind. The more I looked into it, the worse it got. And I realized that they control the interest rates and they print the money because that's basically the bloodstream of civilization. For them, it's a point of control. It's not about making money. It's not about having money. It's about literally controlling civilization. By controlling the interest rates, controlling inflation, and controlling the money supply, you literally control the entire economy. And because of that, the way people think and the way people live.
Theoretically, yeah, 100% true. I'll be honest with you. I think it evolved naturally that way. I don't really see them creating all this just as like a doom and gloom scenario. I think we've been thousands of years. I mean, the Jewish people said, "Do not lend to another Jewish brother with usury." That
Yep.
was like a huge sin for them, you know. And not only that, but they had like
Yeah.
a 7 year forgiveness. If you owed me money
Yeah. The
after
Jubilee.
seven
Yeah.
years, we're gonna let it go. I'm gonna be a bigger man. I'm gonna say, you know what, I love you, brother. I'm gonna let it go. So they've been dealing with this on paper for what, 4,000 years? I think
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Knights Templar did something a little similar too. You got the Swedish Bank, which may have come from some of the Templars also, which also
Yeah.
did a lot of, and I'm not saying that's true or not true, but basically the reason why we got to where we are is because there is no better system. Now we can get even crazier on the argument of how this digital currency is going to take over and how that's going to
Yeah.
play a whole nother spectrum of, oh man, you can go down all kinds of conspiracies at that point, because then you look at what the Chinese are doing with digital currency, what they're doing with the bank
Exactly.
accounts, what they're doing with the cell phones, what they're doing with the apps. I don't know. I don't know. It's one of those things. Once you let Pandora's box out, I don't know how you let it goes away. Once you invent the wheel,
Yeah.
there's no going back. That wheel is going to be there until the end. We're going to see the wheel on the last
Yeah.
5 seconds of the last existence of every human being's invention.
Which is kind of wild if you think about it, because it's been here for what, 10,000 years or
Or
however long.
whoever
We're
knows how
still
long.
using the wheel.
So
Yeah, yeah.
and think about it. That wheel didn't exist until the wheel existed, and then it was not going away. So
Yeah.
I don't see how you play the bank without it existing. Now I'm going to argue that the actual building itself shouldn't even exist. I don't even understand how there's still so many. My town, Bank of America, is gone. So my bank is gone. If I want to do interactions, it's all through my phone now, or I have to drive 20 minutes because there is.
Exactly. Yeah. And no one really goes.
I'll be
No one
damned
wants
if
to
I
sit
pay a
in
$3
line.
fee. There's no way I'm paying a $3 fee to another bank. I'd
Yeah,
rather
exactly.
die. I'd rather die than pay.
Yeah,
It's kind of like
it's ridiculous.
if gas is 20 cents cheaper up 2 miles down the road, I will go drive 2 miles down the road to save that 15
Oh, yeah.
cents, 20 cents.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's just a principle thing or your mind is so ingrained to do something. But yeah, I ain't paying that fee to another bank, so I will either do everything online. But I went to the bank like 3 or 4 years ago, and I was like, I need to do this. And she kind of giggled at me and said, you could do that with your phone. I guess I'm an old man. I don't know. I thought you wanted to sit down with someone to do it. But she was literally arguing her job away, and it went away. The whole building went away.
Yeah.
But I think Twitter is a good example. Facebook getting rid of 10,000 people or whatever. A lot of these white collar jobs shouldn't even exist, and I think they're being nice by letting them go slowly. But they're gone. The banks are gone. Who the hell needs a teller for anything? Anything, unless you work at like a gas station or like a liquor store where you have a big bag of money and you're gonna walk to that bank tomorrow with a bag of money. I don't see the other version of needing that building whatsoever. And I'm sure they could get around that anyways.
Yeah, and I think what's happening too is that, so I think Jordan Peterson might have been talking about this, where basically what's happening is AI isn't necessarily intelligent or conscious. Maybe it is, but it's not necessarily. What it's doing is simulating intelligence. And what it's doing right now is simulating a certain level of IQ, and the IQ and competency grows. So you think of all these jobs as like on this giant graph, and there's this ocean of automation rising up, and bank teller, fast food drive-through person, they're popped all over the place, and as the wave comes up, it just swallows them. And I mean, the biggest issue though is like what happens to all those people, because we haven't created the automation to advance public goods in such a way that when you lose your job, you're not going to be living on the street or lose your home. That's what bothers me, is that at the same rate we're automating jobs, we're not automating public goods at the same rate. And that's where the real issue is, and that's why we have so much poverty.
Well, there is a scam out there that doesn't make any sense to me, and it needs to be explained, and no one has justified this to me yet. Being a little bit older, I remember when the VHS tape came out.
Yeah.
It was this big, gigantic piece of plastic. It was a gigantic brick, and it had
Good old
plastic
days.
tape inside. And they wrapped it in a cardboard box with a real fancy little picture on it.
Yep.
They gave you all the credits on the back. And then they wrapped that in plastic, and they put 60 of them in a big cardboard box, and they took 600 of those cardboard boxes, and they shipped them to Walmart.
Yeah.
I could buy a movie right now on YouTube for $19.99. You don't need the plastic tape. You don't need the plastic case. You don't need the cardboard box. You don't need the plastic wrapped in the cardboard box. You don't need the 40 tapes inside the box that's wrapped in. All that's gone, and I instantly got a movie. Why isn't that movie 99 cents?
Exactly.
Because how much money did they spend?
They didn't have
How
to
much
transport
money
it by truck.
Yeah. How much
No
money
gas,
did they spend
nothing.
making that plastic? Just a plastic reel inside the plastic box. I mean, that must have cost $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. And now this,
it's all gone. It's all gone. It's all gone.
There's no
all
gas,
the middlemen,
no
all the
nothing.
dudes that worked in between to get there. How many factories were involved? Because there's no way it was one factory that did everything. It was a factory that made the tape. Then they created. Then there was somebody that mass produced the video on the tape. Then it went to another factory that made the plastic. And all those guys, and you got to pay capital gains. There's no way. That movie still costs $19.
Going back to your wheel analogy, what I think happens with any technology and money too, because I agree with you. Money facilitates commerce. The exchange of wealth, the standard of wealth, all that makes sense. It's when they see a system and they exploit it, right? That's what it's the condition of the person's heart that runs the business, right? It's the condition of the person at Netflix or whatever that's like, I could sell this for $5 and we're still making 70% profit off each product, but let me get it to 20 because people are used to paying 20. Right, and it's like they're taking advantage of people because they can.
The guy with the EpiPen is a great example.
Yeah, man.
That cat could have easily sold them for $20. $20, because that factory had been making them for how long? 40 years.
Yeah.
So he could have sold them for $20 or $40, made a fortune, built a new factory, charged $50, and then slowly let it get down to $3 or $4. Because the problem is, as we automate and as things get easier to get to the consumer, things are deflating. A great example of deflation in general is right now I can go to Walmart, get an 18-inch TV that weighs about 2 pounds for $88.
Yeah.
I could go right now. I just saw it. I was at Walmart 4 days ago. They come in a gigantic cardboard box. I can pick it up with one hand. It's an orange Roku box and $88.
Yep.
Now, I remember when you had to pay $4,000 for a projection TV that weighed 300 pounds, and you needed 3 dudes that were professionals to get in your house. Otherwise, they'd mess up the mirror, they'd mess up the reflection, and the projection wouldn't work right, and you were jacked. Now another dude would have to come in and mess with your TV, and it only lasted for like 10 years. These TVs should last you like 50 years. If you don't fuck them up and you keep all the inner parts clean and everything so the dust doesn't like muck up. So $88. I got 5 TVs in my house. You got 5 TVs in your house. You have a tag sale, man, and there's a 6 TV. You'd be like, dude, you buy my couch, I'll give you a TV for free. You know what I'm saying? It's just, what is that TV really worth for you? You got 5 hanging on the wall already. What's that 6 TV? And it's meaningless to you. I want to get rid of that couch so bad, I'll give you a TV. So people aren't killing themselves for Jordans anymore, or not very often like they used to when I was a kid. People aren't breaking into cars to steal stereos out of cars. It's just they were literally looking at everything deflating to the point where it had almost no value. Because if you got 100 shoes in your house, 6 beds, 5 TVs, 100 cups, and you start throwing away cups, how much are those things actually worth at the store?
Yeah.
They get to the point where they have no value, and they're like, oh shit, that can't be. Because no matter what, you got 300 million people, eventually a toaster breaks, and you're going to have X amount of people a day needing to buy toasters. That I understand. But here's the deal.
It has utility.
It has utility, but if everybody's got 2 toasters, now the toaster's almost worthless because your mom's like, I'll just give you a toaster. Don't buy a new toaster. I'll just give you one.
Yeah.
And so they were at the point where it was getting to the point where they said, if we don't inflate the value of the dollar, we're going to have an issue with everything being worthless. It's called we were at the age of abundance. There was so right before COVID, China was partnering up with I think it was Chevy, and they were going to make this new car company called Chery. I don't know where it went; it just kind of disappeared. But they were going to make a 4-cylinder car, profit for $5,000. You're going to roll down your window by hand. I'll
take that for $5,000.
But that engine was 100 years old. Someone drew up the blueprints 100 years ago. All the tools and die machines that built that engine were 80 years old. They were sitting in America for the last 60 years in a warehouse doing nothing because they've been automating. So China was just going to take raw manpower, old-ass tools, and make old-ass cars with really nice shiny bodies. And they were going to sell them for a profit at $5,000.
Wow.
So brand new car at $5,000, 4-cylinder engine, and gas at the time, what was oil prices at, like $30 a barrel at the time?
Yeah.
So we were looking at, I think Donald Trump was in office at the time. So I think we were looking at unlimited gas at like $1 a gallon and a car at $5,000 profit. Now, when that car gets 3 years old, what is that car worth? $2?
Maybe $2,000. Yeah.
Okay. So now you got 100 million cars worth $2,000. How are you going to make a profit when you're trying to sell your truck for 50, 60 grand or 100 grand? Now they're at 100.
Yeah.
They were going to wipe
right.
out. They were going to wipe out the value of the 4-cylinder vehicle. They were going to make them almost free, like a cheap $10 sneaker at Walmart.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was really going to happen. That was really going to happen in real life. That's not like a conspiracy theory. That's what was. They were shipping over the machines so Chevy can get China to make cars for $5,000.
Holy crap. That's interesting. So then in our response was to do that, to inflate the dollar.
Okay, well, here's another thing. Why make electric cars? It's not like my vehicle doesn't run very well. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. I put my foot on the gas, and it fucking goes. It goes every time. Every time I put my foot on the gas, it goes.
Yeah.
And I got a guy down the street that'll fix it if it doesn't. Right?
Yeah.
So there's no reason to fix that, right? There's no reason to fix that particular machine. Now, here's the deal. Those batteries are hard to come by. Do you believe we have the capacity to make 300 million cars worth of batteries?
No, especially with the effect of trying to mine lithium and cobalt and how bad it already is. South America and Africa.
The baths they have to make to turn lithium into a battery is insane. So here's the deal. Now you take something that's not scarce and you just created a scarce car. And you raise the value of it. I don't think they made electric cars because they're better. I don't think they made electric cars because all of us are begging for it. They wanted to make electric cars because only a couple million of us can own them. That was the whole purpose. So now you have to Uber.
Yeah.
You have to Uber or you have to be a millionaire and allowed to have a gas car. Because millionaires are allowed to fly all over the world, but you're not.
Yep.
And the way they're going, I don't even know if we're going to be allowed to have steak unless you're a millionaire. Their mindset is they only want millionaires to have all these normals. And they want us to eat bugs, and they want us to take Ubers.
Did you see Robert Downey Jr. is involved in it now? Robert Downey Jr. is trying to sell bug powder. I couldn't believe it.
But do you see how this is playing out, though? It seems like it's an intentional purpose to design a society where everything that shouldn't be scarce is scarce.
Yeah, because, I don't know how you feel about climate change or any of your viewers or whatever, but the climate's always changing, man. It's always changing.
What factory ended the last ice age? I want to tell you. You tell me what factory ended the last ice age. How many cars did it take to get rid of that ice age? And all you
have to do is look at all those spikes and all those ages for thousands of years and realize that sometimes the Earth goes through catastrophic environmental changes. And we weren't there for a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So this whole man-made climate change, we got to switch to, we all know that's nonsense. We also know how bad these lithium batteries are for the environment after they have to junk them out of the car and you can't repair them, you can't recharge them. You got to bury these things in the ground and they're leaking all sorts of crazy toxic fluids. Yeah, that's better. So it had to be something else.
And you got to burn fossil fuels to run them.
Exactly. Yeah, because they can't figure out solar panels for some reason.
Oh, no.
That's the answer. We can't make solar panels efficient enough. What the fuck?
Well, not only that, but I don't think you realize like 80% of the material used to make solar panels is wasted. So they're actually, watch the process of how they make the wafers.
Yeah.
They end up destroying like 60 to 80% of the material to make one. So the actual process of creating one is highly inefficient, number one. Number two, it takes more gasoline kilowatts than it will ever produce itself after it goes live. So it never is a net gain anyways. The closest thing we can come to a net gain is those thermal holes when like
Oh, the
Yeah,
geothermal.
when the natural gas
Yeah.
and stuff goes dry, and they use those old pipes as vents to get the thermal.
Yeah.
Those things work pretty efficiently. Windmills, especially the small ones on a small house, those are pretty efficient. But solar
Yeah, I'm
panels,
surprised I don't see those more because you can make those things really efficient by putting like little fans inside of little fans inside of little fans and letting the whole thing have like three different like points of spin. And like I'm surprised we don't see more of those. Those are cheap. They don't damage the environment. They're very cheap. You could make them at home if you wanted to.
I
I'm
did. I played
surprised we don't
around
see
one time and
more.
I made a small one
Yeah.
myself. I used the
Yeah, they're
battery.
really simple.
Yeah, I used the battery from a treadmill. The pivot point was from an old chair from someone's office. It was like a busted up
Oh,
office
that's
chair.
cool. That's cool. Yeah, yeah.
Let me see. I made the tail out of plywood. But the point was, it wasn't that hard. I goofed
Yeah.
around with some PVC pipe and some plywood, and like I said, an old office chair, and
Yeah.
the
The
RPMs
hardest
were.
part is the brushless motor. The hardest part
Well,
is the
no,
brushless
there was
motor,
all
but
kinds
you
of things
just
I
pull
didn't
it out of a
realize.
fan.
No, you can't. It has to have
You can't?
an RPM ratio to kilowatt ratio. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
Oh,
You
really?
can't trickle charge the battery with enough RPMs. Well, it's even got more complicated than that. As the motor creates electricity and puts it to the battery, if you don't have a bridge rectifier, the battery starts charging back to the motor and turns the motor on itself. So you had to have a bridge rectifier, and there was all these other little nuances of electricity you had to learn. So there was way
Oh.
more to it than you would think. There was, Mark.
I was oversimplifying because I thought if we were putting charge into the system and it causes
No,
spin,
no,
if
it
we
doesn't go
reverse
both ways.
spin,
It will go back and forth, and it'll actually
okay.
suck the battery dry itself, and then charge itself, and
Interesting.
it'll go. Yeah. So I learned all that stuff while I was playing with it. But again, you needed a ratio. It's kind of like horsepower over weight. You had to
Yeah, yeah.
have RPMs over kilowatts. It had to make enough electricity per spin to be worth the effort. Do you understand?
Okay, makes
And I
sense,
found
makes sense.
one, and the one that I found wasn't in your car. It wasn't the alternator in your car. It was the little motor in the treadmill. It was perfect. And people were
That's
throwing
cool.
away treadmills. So if I really would have
Yeah,
followed
yeah,
through
yeah.
on that 10, 15, what was it? Oh, God, it was probably 20 years ago. If I would have followed through on that, I probably could have been mass producing these things by now.
Yeah, you
I
could have
just
had your own
tinkered-
windmill
yeah.
company. Yeah.
I was just tinkering with it, and I never took it seriously, but I should have. Because it was kind of cool.
I was into when I was younger magnet motors. I swore to God I was going to figure out because there's a normal force that's emanating from magnets. I'm like, there's got to be a way to use that. It's constantly pushing.
Yeah.
There's got to be. I never really
There
quite
is.
figured
You
it
gotta-
out, but I've
oh,
heard
you
some
gotta
people
Google it.
have.
There's tons of people that make little light bulb, like little motors and like
Yeah, yeah.
light bulbs with just a couple.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It doesn't take that much, man. They'll put a copper wire around a pencil, make a coil, and it takes like 5 minutes. Or at least it looks, when they make the video and they speed it all up, it's 5 minutes. But
Yeah,
even if
I
it
think
took you
it's
all day, once you do something, you kind of dumb it down after like the fourth or fifth time,
Yeah.
and you start mass producing things rather.
Oh
easily.
yeah. What's kind of bugs me out is that you see things like these magnet motors or like Tesla's stuff about pulling static electricity from the air in large enough amounts that it actually matters. And it all adds up. And you're wondering, it's like, why aren't these companies go working on those projects? Because those would actually work. It's eerie. So I think lends back to what you're saying. So much of it's market manipulation. So much of it's psychological manipulation. It doesn't. But why? Why is it that seems to be the end product of a lot of these governments and these organizations? It seems to produce things that are just okay. You know what I mean? Not quite great, but just enough.
And Nikola Tesla had a setup there where he was literally using the ground and the air to create like a Wi-Fi version of electricity. And I think he accomplished it, and Westinghouse shut that shit down immediately. He said, man, I don't want a scenario where I'm giving away electricity. He's like, but I think they came down, they barked down the wrong tree. They should have sold them to the municipalities, and the cities could have made an easy buy. I'll buy these for $1 million, and Tesla say, Westinghouse, you'll maintain them every year for X amount of dollars a year or whatever, and you'll be a contractor. You're the only ones to get them. And they put it as part of our property tax. So we pick up your garbage, we make sure your streets are good, and you have free electricity in the city. As part of your property tax. So they would have solved the freeness It would have stayed free, but the cities would have paid for it as part, and then we wouldn't have all these telephone poles.
Yep, it wouldn't be so much mess. And it's like, and we have to. They're coming up with a new system for electricity. They have to get rid of all of those telephone poles. Like the way they're trying to talk about reworking this stuff with the underground cables and stuff. You're gonna have to get rid of all that mess now.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's fine. If you look at some of the newer developments, they do it on purpose, and there'll be a box in front of every house or whatever, or a couple bigger boxes every neighborhood or whatever.
Okay.
And I've seen it because I used to do construction in Connecticut, and we had neighborhoods where everything was underground. So they would have like those fancy little English light posts as more of an aesthetic thing because all the poles. Our brains are so used to seeing those telephone poles that having those little posts up actually is aesthetic to us. And it's kind of because we normally not only that, but then there would be no lights on the streets because we put the lights on the telephone poles.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I noticed that those neighborhoods would have these aesthetic little street signs, and 100 yards later or 50 yards later, a nice aesthetic, old school looking wrought iron, fake looking English. You know what I'm saying? So they're still going to come up with new ideas. The problem is everything's moving so fast that if you were to come up with an idea and say, okay, we're going to do this, 20 years from now, it'll all be obsolete.
Yeah.
If you were to
and
say
it's going to get quicker and quicker too.
It multiplies, and not only that, but it gets better and better, and it multiplies. And before you know it, Cat 5 is completely obsolete. Fiber optic is completely obsolete. What is the cable line? What is the TV cable? What is that called? Coaxial cable is completely, and all of a sudden we're 3 generations past all of that. And if you would have spent $1 billion on that fiber optic, it would be completely worthless. So they do have this issue where they don't know where it's going yet.
And they don't know where to stick their finger in the water to say we're going to make this one or we're going to put dollars.
And I don't think that's a conspiracy. I think it's just reality.
No, that makes sense. That's a good point.
Because here's the deal: once you spend $1 billion, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing for another 20, 40, hopefully 100 years. And I would rather wait 5 more years. And I think that there's so much coming out of the pipework. I don't think people realize. For instance, when the cell phone first came out, it was flip phone, blah, 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 blah. But once it became a smartphone, we didn't realize the ramifications of all those apps. It was unforeseen. You don't realize that Tinder is going to change things so dramatically, that Instagram and Facebook. Now, Facebook on the computer changed things, but when you put it on your phone and you can look at it while you're on the DMV, it changed everything, man. It went, it escalated the value of it to a level. Right now, I'm vying for people's attention that used to be on cable television in the living room.
Yep.
5 people used to sit in the living room and watch TV together, and they would argue over what show they would watch. Now, everybody's independently vying for that exact attention. Who the hell owns cable television? Do you have 400 channels?
I don't touch cable.
I haven't had that in a long time, bro. I haven't had that in a long time. That ship, that sailed, man. I will never pay $75 for 400 channels when I watch 3 and they loop every 6 hours.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is people are enjoying what's called, long form conversation way more. People used to like snappy sitcoms. Now people are willing to sit down for 3 hours and listen to a couple of folks talk about some wacky shit for, you know what I mean? And like that's what they love. They love new ideas, mind-opening ideas, expansive ideas. So I think people are getting more like intelligent and thought-provoking at the same time. Not the whole population, but you're seeing a larger interest in just, I don't care who you are. It matters what you're talking about. You could be Joe Blow down the street. If you're saying something cool and interesting, I want to check you out.
Yeah, and you just got to find a niche because there's 300 million people, and none of them want to watch the news. Dad might want to watch the news, but the other 5 don't. And now you're not fighting for all 5 people to watch the same show. So it doesn't have to be Everybody Loves Raymond. It doesn't have to be that 70s show. It doesn't have to be Seinfeld. It doesn't have to hit everybody. You have to hit that teenage girl. You can hit that teenage boy. You can hit the guy at 30, the mom at 50. And you just have to hit that niche now because none of them are watching TV. And I'll be honest with you, one of the reasons why I think they're liking the long form is they're still playing on their phone while I'm talking in the background on the TV. They're still playing on their phone.
Yeah,
so there's that background noise of me talking while they're still playing on TikTok.
Yep. Do you think we're still retaining things though?
We
'Cause
don't
I
need
agree
to,
with
we
you.
don't
That's
have to.
happening all the time.
What do you need to retain? If I gave you my phone
Yeah.
number, would you memorize it?
No, not unless I thought I had to.
I can
Yeah.
tell you my best friend's phone number from 1989. It's still up in this noggin. I can see it on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
keypad. I can still see it on the phone because I had to retain that information.
Yes. Yeah.
It
I think
wasn't
I
a matter
remember
of
like two of
want
my
or
friends'
needed.
numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, who the hell remember? I don't know. I hardly remember my daughter's phone numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because it's just saved. And they said something about how all this technology, as much as it's easy and fun, we're actually losing our ability to use our brain the way we used to be able to do. Google Maps, you don't have to know what a map looks like. There's whole regions of your brain that aren't being used anymore. It's like that's a little on the negative side, maybe, is that
But again,
we're not as
it's
capable if
unforeseen.
everything
It's
came down.
unforeseen parts of the technology. There's no
Yeah.
way someone could have predicted all of the stuff that happened. But
Yeah.
again, it was inevitable. It's just like the wheel. I don't think we're getting rid of the cell phone and this
Yeah.
AI and the robots and everything, the self-driving cars. I guarantee you, this each one of those things I just said will have 10 ramifications we don't yet acknowledge as existing yet. That will be everyday life for my grandkids.
Oh yeah, like who would have thought that the camera and the radio would become the television before it happened?
You
No
couldn't
one
see it.
would
You
have
couldn't
ever
see it.
thought that.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what? They were fighting for that immediately. They wanted. They can
They wanted the
see.
waves.
Oh
Yeah,
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 they
yeah,
could
yeah,
see that
yeah.
it was coming. Yeah, yeah. Man, there was so much to be talked about on that. I'll be honest with you. We're coming close to a time where I don't think we're going to be able to turn back, and we're going to lose things. But here's the deal that's really important. Where did the rocket ship come from? Verbron or whatever invented it, but
Yeah.
there was no rocket ship store on Mars where you drove up to Mars and said, "I want to buy 3 rockets." The rocket didn't exist, and then one day, Verbron said it would exist, and the Wright
Yeah.
brothers did the same thing. They said, "I want to fly like the birds," and everybody laughed at
Yeah.
them. But they could see something that didn't exist. So
Yeah.
our minds are like these gardens that you just, if you plant properly and you water it
Yeah,
properly and
man.
you keep the snakes out for long enough to actually think on your own, you could create something from nothing, almost like God. I wonder if that's what he meant
Yeah.
when he said, "I created the heavens and earth, I created everything in 7 days," and he just spoke it into existence. Well, thought is also speech.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
speech becomes reality, and we have this godlike power to create things from nothing. Literally
Absolutely.
create
Yeah.
things from
Yeah.
nothing. So we're not losing anything with our brain, and I don't think our brains were designed to like make things levitate. I don't think our brains were meant to talk to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
90% of our brain is sitting dormant. And if you get into a TBI incident where you get into a car crash or something like that, you can relearn how to walk again because blood will flow to parts of your brain that never existed before. And sometimes it unleashes parts of your mind that you didn't even know existed. And here's another thing that people don't realize. When you go on an adventure, you literally, like, say, learning how to do all this with the podcast. I did construction
Yeah.
for 10 years. I didn't know how to do this. But as I learned how to do this, I opened up new parts of who I am.
Yeah.
Just like that TBI will get blood flowing to new parts of my brain, and all of a sudden you open up more of who you are, you have more potential in you than you realize. And if you
Yeah.
don't chase your passions, because people don't realize this, you don't pick your passions. Your passions pick you, and you choose to chase them.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you don't chase them, the world becomes a lesser place. And
Absolutely.
your potential is squandered. We got a bunch of young guys out there right now jerking off, playing video games, and sitting around at their mom's house saying, "Fuck it, I ain't gonna make $10 an hour for nothing. I could play Call of Duty all day and eat chips."
Yeah.
There's so much potential out there, and we're all way more connected than we realize, and we have the opportunity to make things better. And we have an opportunity to we still live in a free society. If you wanted to start a business, you could still start a business. And
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
be honest with you, you could challenge all the norms. There's a guy out there right
Yeah.
now that should be chasing a passion that's not. That could be competing with maybe even Elon Musk to a certain degree. Almost
Yeah.
all the big guys.
Well, you don't know until you know. Yeah, you don't know until you don't. You don't know what you're actually capable of until you actually try it. And I think the biggest problem is pain tolerance. I think a lot of people don't like pain tolerance because if you get out of that basement, stop playing Call of Duty, right? And stop yanking it, and you go out into the world and you're like, I'm going to learn this thing. And where do I go first,
Yeah,
right?
but
There's a
you don't even
pain.
know. You don't even know where that goes.
Exactly. But they're afraid because of the pain. It's like Frodo going on his journey. It sucks, but it's worth it. Right. And so I think a lot like the biggest problem for young people and maybe older people too, but definitely young people, it's like they don't understand that 99% of the time you're going to get up tomorrow morning unscathed. No matter how difficult it was to try to take that jump or leave that job and start your business. Yes, it's going to suck. Yeah, there's going to be difficult points. When you get to those really, really low points, it's when you understand that, wow, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to die. Let's do this. They've got to develop that pain tolerance and that ability to be like, I can take the jump and I'm probably going to be okay because I'm resourceful. And if not, my brain will figure it out because it wants to be alive.
Yeah.
It wants to thrive.
And people don't realize when you look at like fairy tales or the Bible and they tell these stories, the reason why they tell these stories is if you believe in something, you have to act it out. If you don't act it out, it doesn't really exist. So your belief is worthless without acting it out. If I believe I can start a podcast, the only way I can prove it is by acting it out. And when they tell the stories in the Bible and stuff, a great example would be they leave Pharaoh, the oppressor, the tyrant, and they go on a journey for 40 years in the desert. That was a miserable. It was so bad. They're like, damn it, just send us back. We'll go back to the tyrant. I'd rather be a slave and know where everything is tomorrow than even bother going to the promised land.
Yeah.
But if you can tolerate that desert, the promised land is 10 times more than you realize. There's so much more. You have so much more to give than you ever could possibly realize. You have your Wright brothers moment. You have your Vern Braun moment. And you will be so thankful. Because people don't realize. You start your own business. Everybody's like, oh, hi. And no one's there for you. No one cares.
You're doing it by yourself.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Now, once you make it, now everybody's on board. Wow, man, I'm so glad I helped you. I'm so glad I was there for you. I'm so glad I supported you. I believed in you from the beginning. And all of a sudden, everybody out of the woodwork, and you don't realize that everybody, Elon Musk went through that to a certain degree. Bill Gates. And I think that's part of the fun. Part of the fun is actually is suffering. We were designed for a burden. We weren't designed to jerk off and play video games. That's not what we're designed to do.
And that's why they're depressed. That's why they're miserable. They don't realize it, but they keep giving themselves rewards they know they don't deserve.
That's another thing. We got dopamine chases now that are absolutely insane. I could not. Now think about it. We were designed to go hunt or whatever, and if you caught what you hunted for, you got to eat. So now you had the thrill of the chase. You had all this adrenaline rush. And now you got this heart.
And you got the serotonin. You got the reward.
And you got this heart in your head, and you're eating this raw heart. Because man, you're like,
you're the super alpha.
Can you imagine never experiencing that in your life?
Yeah, and just going to the grocery store and buying it.
Well, no, that's fine. You could find it anywhere though. It doesn't have to be in that struggle with the deer. It doesn't have to be with the deer or the gazelle or whatever the hell it was. It could be it could be watching your kids become something great because you put so much bullshit time into going fishing and playing board games. But there's plenty to chase, man. There's a whole world out there to chase.
Yeah. And I do think it's really missing. But there's another thing too, on top of that you were mentioning how people won't have your back. It's like another thing that'll happen, and you also have to fall in love with this part of it too, is people will get jealous of you, and you haven't even like oh, it must be nice that I have to do a 9 to 5. No, it's not nice. It's brutally painful to build this business by myself and not sure if I'm going to be able to pay my bills this week because I'm trying to get the company into black or et cetera, or your culture changes. You completely change as a person, and how you see the world, and all of those things, that all those friends, all those support systems that used to make sense no longer make sense, because you're not going to the bar at 6, 7 o'clock to have drinks with friends. You're still working, and so there's that burden of it too. But you're right. I think falling in love
You
with
change as a
it.
person. You
Yeah,
literally, as you chase your passions, parts of you become potential that didn't exist until you went on that adventure.
yeah, yeah. And you have more confidence in yourself. You have more love for yourself. You have more respect for all these brilliant people at the top, like you said, like a Musk, or a Tony Robbins, or whoever. You're like, wow, okay. I know they don't talk about this part. What Elon Musk does, he says making a business is like eating glass. There's a few people that every now and then will say, no, it sucks really, really, really bad, right? But usually I'm waiting for a business person to talk about how how much it sucks, and then give the resolution, or the answer to get past that suck, because that would be a great
No,
book.
there is an answer.
Yeah,
You walk 40 years in the desert.
yeah,
If
yeah,
that's
yeah.
6 months of grinding in front of a computer, if that's 2 years in a garage making whatever you make,
Machining and tooling something, yeah,
whatever it
for a new
is that you got
invention.
to
Yeah,
do alone at seven
yeah,
o'clock and that oil and all that bullshit,
yeah.
you do it.
Yeah, and you do fall in love with it. You're right. So like, I don't know how many of your listeners are folks that might be on the edge of, taking that jump and starting a business, but you really fall in love with it to the point where you need less sleep. Like you'll literally realize you don't need as much sleep. You start eating better because you have to. Because if you don't eat better, you'll be exhausted. And like you have, and then you and when you do something like you said, the passion finds you. When you're doing the thing you love, it doesn't feel like work. You'll do the 12 hours, and it won't feel like a half day at your 9 to 5 you hated. Like you'll feel more energized. You don't have to sleep as much. I mean, that's what I've experienced when I started the business. It was like I loved it. Like I had a lot of that's all I did was work, and I actually enjoyed it. And I found a couple people that loved it too. So I wasn't like I was lonely. I found some business partners, and I really did have a blast. I'm not sure about your experience with this stuff, but you end up actually having a lot of fun even as you're suffering.
I was meant to do this, and I actually
Yeah.
talked to a buddy. He's in one of my first audio podcasts too. He was an old friend from back home, and I wasn't even doing video at the time. And I remember we sat down for breakfast one time, and construction was dead. It was the Bush recession there, and he's like, "Well, obviously you got to find another job. Why don't you go into radio?" I'm like, "Man, I got like 3 or 4 kids at the time. There's no going to school to become a DJ or
Yeah,
taking
yeah,
your
yeah. Oh,
chance of
yeah,
doing it at night."
exactly.
I was like, "There's no
Yeah.
way. I got to get a 9 to 5 job right now. I need to get health insurance right now." So I put it on the back burner. I knew that was something I wanted to do. I knew it was something I had in me to do because I loved to talk.
Yeah.
And I let it go for 10 years. Worked for the federal government for 10 years. Actually more, 11 and a half years. 11 and a half years. It ate away at my
Yeah.
soul, man. It ate away at my soul.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not there's something it's kind of like I don't like when they make kids sit in desk for 6 to 8 hours.
Especially
It's
young
not good for
men.
them.
Especially young men.
They need to move, man. What do you think ADHD is? It means the kid
It,
needs to move,
it means
right?
he hasn't dug a deep enough post hole yet.
Yeah, exactly. Like
That's a,
like get them to do stuff. Let them use their hand. So it's the same thing as an adult. I think it's just like we're not drones. We're not bees. We're not ants. We're sapiens. We like to make music. We like to sing. We like to produce. We like to go have fun. We like to exercise. We like to win things. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's soul crushing, man.
it is soul crushing. And I think it's the chasing the passion and having the purpose and aiming for a target. Even if you can't see the target really well, aiming for it anyways.
Yeah.
And crawling closer until you can see it correctly. And then
Yeah.
screaming and yelling when you actually hit the target a little bit, man.
Hit it with a hatchet instead of the arrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that won't do it. Once you're at that point, now you got to get a new target. Now you got to look a little further.
Exactly.
But it's a never-ending video game. It's a never-ending Call of Duty that actually has some fulfillment, and there's actually some.
Yeah.
Trying to think of the word, man. It's almost the search for the meaning of life. Having a
Yeah.
purpose is the meaning of life. Because if you
Exactly.
look at that story,
Yeah.
go back to the Bible again, you look at Abraham, God says, get out of your dad's tent and go on an adventure. That sounded miserable. I read that. That was a miserable story. He takes his
Yeah.
wife and he gets to Egypt. Now the king tries to steal his wife from him because he's afraid that they're going to kill him for his wife because his wife is pretty. And then it was like,
Yeah.
so he lies and says it's his sister. Then they almost starve to
Yeah.
death because there's a famine. So then there's raiders, and then he got to go save his nephew and all their flock. And that sounded miserable. He could have stayed at his dad's tent and played video games instead. And I think he got called at like 80 years old. A crazy old dude with a gorgeous hot wife gets called out at like 75, 80 years old to go on this crazy adventure. Starts the whole Jewish
That's
religion.
insane.
It's absolutely insane. And,
Yeah.
But again, we listen to these stories because if you wrote a list, this is what I want you to do, and then wrote a book saying this is the list of things you want to do, no one would do it. But you watch someone have faith in something that's being told to them and then act it out, and you act it out in a story. So now I watch King David do something, or someone gives like their life story, like Elon Musk writes his life story. He'll explain, I did this, this didn't work. So I almost gave up completely and started drinking. And then I waited 3 days and said, you know what, I'm going to get back on the horse and do it again. And then all of a sudden he escalates. And he finally gets what he wants by just grinding past that desert moment. And how many people do 2 weeks on TikTok, or how many people do a month on Instagram or Facebook, whatever it be, or YouTube or whatever. And then they're just one day they're exhausted, or one day someone convinces them to go to the bar, or convinces them to drone out in front of the TV, or whatever it be. I don't know, man. And they give up. They give up too short, too easy, too early. Or they start a business and they do construction for a couple months. And you do great. And one guy says you did a bad job, because there's always critics, and they just give up. They're like, screw it. Or they have a hard time where they didn't make any money because they had to pay 2 guys everything they made. That happened to me in construction.
Or when someone literally steals your money. That's a great one. That's always a nice one. Or when you do the work for them, they don't pay you. Like that happens too. And like they make it so you can't do anything. Like it's before you learned about all these different agreements that you had to get them to sign. And it's like, you're right, man.
Now people don't realize the greatest artists are the broke ones. When you have very limited money to be able to create that sculpture, your creativity has to go into overdrive to get it accomplished. And just like making a bomb or a missile or an airplane out of nothing, your brain has the ability to make so much with so very little. It's absolutely astonishing what kind of production you can create with nothing.
I want to touch back on what you said too about the promise land, 'cause I really love the way you think about this. And you've already kind of expanded my awareness on like the things that I do. And I'm already thinking in my head, how the heck am I going to apply some of this stuff? But this idea that you have to have an object, like you said, you may not know exactly what the target is or how to hit it, but you got to have something that you love, that means something to you, because whether it's being on TikTok or being in your garage machining the tool, there has to be this promised land, this object you're trying to acquire that transcends whatever the work is now. Or I think I'm going to try TikTok because it's fun. Yeah, but where is it going? What is your story? To have at least a loose outline of what your story is going to be like. So when we read the story of Abraham and we're like, wow, this guy's life is insane.
It makes so much more sense. It makes so much more sense. Like, wow, I understand what they're talking about. I can picture him going through that bullshit and lying. I can see why he lied. And some of the best part of the adventure is when you're in that machine shop and you make the part, and then all of a sudden the bit breaks. And you're like, fuck, and you want to smash the machine. It's kind of like you're playing the guitar and your fingers don't want to work right, and you want to break all your fingers and smash the guitar into 50 million pieces. But one more day, you just got to go one more day, and your fingers will start listening, and your fingers will start going the right way, and all of a sudden you put the new bit on your piece, and all of a sudden you're lathing. Some of that is the best part, especially when you hindsight look back at it. You're saying, "Wow, I can't believe Mark himself had the due diligence to stick with it 3 more days after that daunting moment." Where I didn't have any money, and I still had to make that product. I still had to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to die come hell or high water, this is going to happen.
Yeah, because and that's another thing too. It's like what if you are miserable at whatever thing you're going to do, and you're probably going to be miserable until you retire, and even then, you're not going to have enough money to enjoy it. That is death. So why wouldn't you risk a little danger to live life, right? I think the hardest thing for me, at least recently, was about 6 months back. I was running this large Discord channel, and I realized that I literally had like 10 or 20 people around me who were actively trying to destroy everything. Like that, like it would, like they were being paid to do it. And I brought a new person to come in, and I've been connecting with them, and they seemed legit. And I'm like, yo, just to let you know, I'm not sure what the heck's going on. I think there's a bigger problem here. And so I kind of announced to everyone that this person was coming into the circle, and I told this person, pay attention to how they treat you. They immediately descended on her and were trying to turn her against me. And I had to realize that my entire like support group was a bunch of these connivers. I don't know if they're like working for other TikTok accounts or something, or but it broke my heart, man. And I was out of it for probably 3 months. Like I just couldn't do the videos, man. I was like, who do I trust? How do I know how to trust somebody? Is this ever going to stop happening? But looking now, man, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about seeing the tiniest little red flags, like in someone's behavior or whatever. And I'm like, there's another there. I learned that I don't have to answer every message in my TikTok thing all the time, right? It's like, and I feel stronger and better. It still hurts a little bit for that to happen, especially when you get betrayed by people who you're trying to rely on and trust. But I'm glad I didn't give up. And that felt like a spiritual assassination. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah. Benevolence,
hurting,
benevolence
man.
is way worse than natural disaster. People don't
Yeah,
realize this. You know, your intimate family member or someone you love was to die from a mudslide or an earthquake or
yeah,
some natural disaster. Your brain can say, okay, this is the way the earth is created. This is how the
yeah,
universe
yeah, yeah,
works. This is the system in which we live in. I have to accept this and I have to move on.
yeah,
But when I betray you, you have to look at yourself and say, who am I as a person? And was I so gullible that I allowed these people? So you actually, it's not only just a betrayal, because that's another thing with the Bible. People keep downplaying it. It has so much value. The Garden of Eden. Why are they associating nakedness with the knowledge of good and evil? Why is that their association with those two things?
Do you think it's like a sort of a metaphor for your being like psychologically transparent or emotionally transparent, like having to be more open in those things coming out?
Once they woke up and they saw that they were naked, they realized they were vulnerable.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
okay. So what does that say about Mark if Mark's vulnerable?
That Mark is subject to
No,
death,
that
insanity.
Regan's vulnerable. You know
Oh, yeah, yeah,
everything that could hurt my heart. You know
yeah,
how to get right down to the bone and hurt my
yeah,
heart. So everything that hurts your heart hurts my heart. And
yeah,
you know it. And you know it.
yeah.
And I
And then you have
trust
two. You
you.
have two.
And I trust you and you still betray me?
Exactly.
Wow. So now what the Mark I thought was that existed doesn't really exist anymore. And my whole
Yeah,
universe kind of like crumbles. And I have to build a
yeah,
whole new universe based on why am I a sucker and can I trust another Mark?
yeah. Can you trust? And then can you trust anyone? Because
Uh,
so if Mark betrays you, Mark's upside down now. You're like, okay, I don't even know who this guy is. But then you're like, I'm not sure who I am because I seem to not be able to pick. And then the next one, this even scarier question is, I don't know what a human being is,
yeah.
and I don't know how
I
to
got to build a
understand
wall.
this.
Now I got to build a wall around my garden because I don't
Yeah,
want
man.
snakes to get in my garden. But
Yeah,
here's the deal: it's just like that promised land. You can't keep the snakes out of your garden.
yeah,
And if you could, would you want to? That's one of the reasons why, like, the whole concept of, like, the good and evil thing is we ate that apple and think of it as it actually happening, like it actually happened. There was a woman
yeah,
sitting in the garden. There was a man walking around. She bit into the apple. She's looking at the student. She's like, look at this motherfucker. He doesn't even know he's naked. This dumb
Yeah.
motherfucker doesn't even know he's naked. Look at this
Yeah.
dumbass. Look at him. She's like, come here, eat this so you can realize what's going on. And then you play it out and you think about it, So the garden is got a snake in it. What is better? To be bored and playing video games and never have to worry about the snake, or being strong enough to kill it?
Exactly.
Which better? Which adventure is better? Which adventure is better?
Absolutely.
I want to be the snake killer. I want to be the snake killer.
Yeah.
I don't want to build a wall around my garden. I want to weed. I want to weed my garden so I can see the snakes as soon as they get there, and I'm gonna whoop some ass. And I'm gonna be a soldier in a garden, not a gardener at a war.
Yeah, exactly.
And devouring mother, and you see all these analogies of these stories. They all have way more meaning than real. So here's the deal: all these books and all these stories, how did they make it 1,000 years? Because they had some tangible value.
Yes,
they got condensed.
And they still matter.
Oh, they still matter. Actually, they matter more now. They matter more now
because we've lost our way.
We've lost so much, and we're on the verge of losing who we are because we don't care enough to listen to these stories.
Yeah, when I'm on my TikTok, these are the two main problems I seem to have with people who watch and comment if they're disagreeing. They either are people who take all the stories absolutely literal, or been given a really bad explanation by someone they trusted to read the book, or they think it's all fantasy fairy tales ridiculous. And I'm like, no. The stories are incredibly important. It's a little complicated. There's more to it. It requires you to actually study it, but they're operating on multiple levels. There's always a moral lesson. There's always something to learn that actually makes sense. Some of these things is relevant history, great philosophy, and how it's kind of crazy when you see these groups of people who either like I said, they're taking it absolutely literal and not getting the moral lesson out of it, or they're like, oh, it's just a bunch of stupid stuff that's not real. It's like, you guys are missing the richness and beauty of the text, right? And that's surprising. And then, like you said, at the same time, it seems like we're in a war for the human soul. And there's so many people on the sides of the fence that don't even realize how important these moments are.
Yes, and you can't get them back. Time is one of those variables that you don't get a second chance. And we're all in. I don't think people realize this is an all-in sum game. You're not going to get... So taking that risk and fighting a couple snakes may be the greatest adventure you ever had in your life, and you don't even recognize it's right in front of you. And we're dumb enough to not see doors when they're wide open. We are blind enough and dumb enough. And I don't know if that is a spiritual thing where you literally can have $1 million door open right in front of you and walk right by it.
Yeah.
That happens to everybody. Yeah. Especially in this society that we created. There's money flying around everywhere, and it's so easy. It's almost impossible not to walk by $1 million door. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. I think it boils down to risk aversion and low pain tolerance. To be it always goes back to what if I die? What if I go broke?
Well, you're going to die anyways. You're going to die anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you don't take a chance, you're going to die broke anyways.
And sad and bored and feeling crappy that you didn't do more cool shit. Yeah. For sure, man.
So I have a theory on how all this is going to play out. Because like I said with the wheel and all these other things, I don't think you can go back. You can only go forward. I don't see, just like you got 80 years, you got to make the best of it or whatever. It seems like
we never go back. Yeah, and it never goes back. We have romanticism. We have romantic movements where we take a couple things from the past, bell-bottom jeans or something, but we never go backwards.
There may be a hard reset sometimes where there's a natural disaster that destroys everything.
Yeah.
And there seems to be some evidence that there's been a couple times where that's happened.
I just made a video on that, and it's going out of control on TikTok as we speak. Actually, it's
congratulations, man! Congratulations, that's great, man. Hopefully, it gets to 1 million, man.
Yeah, but it's all about the possibility that we actually get reset every now and then.
I think our society in general has the easiest capacity for reset, because if you look at the Romans and the Greeks and the Egyptians, everything they had was in stone.
Yeah, so they knew.
So I don't care if you put everything under water for 60 days or 90 days, whatever it was. It was still going to be stone with all the words on it for 1,000 years. You could bury it. You could do it. Now, My cell phone. Oh, I don't have it on me here. My cell phone. How long would that last underwater and then buried under sand?
If
How
it's not
valuable?
waterproof, 30 seconds. Yeah.
Useless. So
Yeah.
if we had a hard reset, it would be quite
Wow.
easier for a hard reset. But I don't think
Yeah.
we're looking at a hard reset. I think what we're seeing is the white collar jobs are going to disappear.
Yeah.
One of the first podcasts I did with my daughter, we talked about AI and the cars and all that stuff, and they got coffee shops that are these small booths, the size of someone's like 2 bathrooms, maybe, or like a small bedroom, and literally there's a robot arm that it looks exactly like the ones that make the cars and do all the like welding and stuff.
Yeah.
It's got all these elbows and everything, and it literally makes coffee. So you put $5 at the front of the building, and a coffee comes out,
man.
and it's the
Things are getting
barista.
weird,
The barista is a robot arm.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It's a real thing. So
Wild, man.
So they look like they're going to be able to use kiosks and pre-order it with your phone and have a robot make your coffee, and potentially, we're watching it too, make your own burgers, make your own. There's going to be one engineer at McDonald's, and he's going to do an 8-hour shift, and he's going to make sure all those fucking robot arms do their job.
Yeah, don't fall off or start punching someone.
and basically, it'll be one dude making millions of burgers a day.
Yeah.
And literally, it looks like that's where we're going really
Without
fast.
breaking a sweat.
And
yeah.
So white collar jobs are gone. The banks are gone. Obviously, Twitter can run with like 10 people. Let's see. So McDonald's looks like it could be gone. And not only that, but they could go even further. You order it on your app. A robot makes it. A car that drives itself brings it to your house. You don't even have to leave your house. Don't even have to leave your house. So the grocery store doesn't need human beings. They're already talking about you just ride your cart past it and just scans your groceries, zaps your credit card, and bam, you just walk out without doing anything. Well, what if they said, well, last week Regan bought $180 worth of groceries. He had 2 steaks, this, and this. Well, we're just going to have a car send it to your house next week, and we'll just deduct it from your paycheck.
Yeah. And then you make small edits when you want to add a couple new things. But
so now my question is, you don't have to leave your house. There's robots walking around building the roads. There's robots going around fixing everything. There's cars driving themselves. Now, the big one, people don't realize this, about 75% of the lower middle class, like the poor, what was it, between $25,000 and $55,000 a year, I think 40 or 50% of those men are truck drivers. They're all going to go out of business at once.
Wow.
So how many men is that? 100?
A lot.
100 million men?
That's a lot, man.
Okay. So now what are they going to do? They're going to work at McDonald's? No, we don't need you to work at McDonald's. There's this one guy that's been working there for 20 years. Yeah. He knows how all the robot arms work. He's going to be the engineer. He doesn't have to go to school. He knows how all of them work because he watched them as they took over his job. Yeah. Right? He's going to be the engineer. And as he gets old, we'll replace him with college kids that get...
Exactly.
Or tech school kids, whatever you want to call it, whatever. But eventually, 99.9% of the jobs will not exist. Yeah. Robots will be able to stock the shelves. Have you watched the ones that are Boston Dynamic robots?
Yeah, those are wild, man.
Man, this dude's over there with a hockey stick.
Now.
Yeah. He's knocking boxes out of its hand. It picks it back up. He knocks them down. It gets back up.
They kick them. They can balance themselves out. And
Yeah. So if you don't think that's the flip phone that's going to turn into the iPhone 11 or iPhone 15, whatever we are.
Exactly.
Those robots right now they're the flip phone. They will be the iPhone 15 eventually.
Oh, yeah, and it won't take too long because they're going to start building themselves and reinventing themselves. That's where it gets insane.
Well, here's the deal.
They're going to be able to calculate things we can never calculate.
Here's one that's going to blow your mind, Mark. So you got a chair in your kitchen. You sit on the chair. You know to sit on the chair, but you're smart enough to know that I can look outside the box. I can go beyond what that chair's purpose is. I have a box in my hand. I need to put the box down. I can put the box down and the chair. Now the chair's a table.
Yeah.
But you had to have faith enough to experiment and try to do it.
Yeah.
So right now, AI only experiments on paper. It thinks, and then it writes out its thoughts. and it basically
Yeah,
it regurgitates our thoughts.
yeah.
Once you put that mind, that artificial mind, into a robot body, why do you think those robots are the size, shape, and form of us? Because they couldn't sit down if it was 15 feet tall. It couldn't sit in any of our chairs.
Yeah.
It couldn't walk through our doors.
Yeah.
If it didn't have arms, it wouldn't be able to open up cabinets. They're literally building them to experience the existence in the world that we experience in the form and manner in which we experience it.
Wow.
So if you put their brains in their bodies and say, go ahead and experience our life. Now test the idea you had on paper. Test it against the chair. Test it against the cabinet. Test it against the car. Test it against the road.
They're going to see every inefficiency. They're going to see everything that doesn't work.
And as they get smarter, they get faster. They get faster, they get smarter. As they get smarter, they get faster. And it's almost like an asteroid. As it gets closer to Earth, every distance, when you half the distance of an asteroid towards an object, you quadruple the speed.
Yeah, because of the gravity.
Yeah. So the faster they learn, the faster they go, the faster they go, the faster they learn.
Yeah.
The snowball gets
until
bigger.
it's breakaway. Yeah.
So literally, once we put the brains inside their bodies and they can experience the real world and test out the chair and test out the plumbing and they learn how to rewire things and they learn how to do all the things we do, they're going to get so efficient. Because think about what you do. When you fold a pizza box for the first time, it takes like a minute. You got to fold it, you fuck it up, and you fold it again. You get the second one. Yeah. You get the second one, you don't fuck up as much. And all of a sudden, you're on box 3000. Dexterity. Your dexterity is actually you bypass the brain part, and it's almost like a mundane task.
Yeah.
And you check it off.
Basically muscle memory.
Yeah, muscle memory, and you check it off. Well, robots will do the same thing.
Yeah.
With everything.
Yeah.
They're going to have the passion we have to get everything mundane and meticulously done well with everything because they're constantly goal driven. I got to learn how to do this really well.
Yeah.
And now I got to learn how to do this very well. Then I got and now a passionate person could do that with a handful of things. Now a robot can do that with everything until they run out of battery.
Yeah, literally, the robots take electricity as pay. And they don't have families. They don't have, a friend that they just got in a fight with. They don't have to worry about their dog dying and they have to take a day off from work. Like, none of those things exist. But then what do you think, where does that leave human beings?
That's where my theory comes in. This is where my conspiracy theory comes in. So now Mark has nothing to do. Regan has nothing to do. And actually, I would be shocked if they wouldn't say, hey, Mark, why don't you stay in your house? The robots are cutting the lawn. The robots are fixing everything. Everything looks perfect. It would be safer if you just stayed in your house.
Yeah.
Now what do? We proved that you can only do it for so long before everybody just goes completely berserk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, maybe we get connected to the metaverse and we go fictitiously work for the metaverse where we go and work in a factory in the metaverse for 8 hours a day.
And have purpose, or be like, God mode and fly around and build things, whatever the heck,
How else would you keep everybody in their house? How else would you keep everybody in their house?
And maybe that's why they did it a couple years back. It was really a soft test.
Because I'm telling you right now, those cars are coming online. And people don't realize the day the cars go online, which they will eventually, no matter what you say, they will eventually go online. The robots go online the same day. Because they got the same camera, they got the same GPS, they got the same Wi-Fi. They got all the same stuff the car has. They just got feet instead of wheels, and they got arms instead of doors. That's the only difference. Yeah. The only difference. So if you watch Tesla, the way the robots are looking, like the car robots are looking, that robot, the robot with the arms, is going to look at everything the same way.
Yeah, it's all the same. It's all the same
guts.
systems.
Yeah, it's all the same guts. There's no difference. There's absolutely no difference. So the people don't realize the day the cars go online, the robots go online too. And I think that's one of the reasons why we upgraded all the Wi-Fi. What is it now? It's 5G or whatever.
5G,
So now I can have 3 devices in my pocket. That's not why they did it, so I can have 3 cell phones in my pocket.
No. They need higher bandwidth because they're going to be servicing a lot more machines.
Can you imagine?
Need a lot higher processing.
And not only that, they can have self-driving gas cars. It doesn't have to be an electric car.
Yeah.
You could put the actuators in to a gas car, especially when you build it. You can have little actuators steer the wheels. And I'll
Oh
be
yeah,
honest with
yeah.
you, when Nissan was talking about doing it when they first started, their first philosophy was, we don't even want a steering wheel. We just want you to have this giant screen. And actually,
Yeah.
I think they're so adamant about the giant screen in the car is Apple and all these people are fighting for screen time on your car. They're
That's the new bill.
all,
It'll be the new billboard. You're right. It's a new billboard.
yeah,
Yeah, shit,
man.
yeah.
Because think about it, man. And then you got to travel. Now, 4 people travel in the car, and there's 6 or 7 screen. It's going to be a wild future. I have no idea what it looks like exactly, but it looks like, I don't know. It could go. It could go either to a form of utopia, or it can go to
Exactly.
dystopia, or it could go dystopia, and we live in a living hell.
Yeah, I'm working on. I've been working on this book for years. It's called The Apocalypse Is Always Tomorrow. It's a series of sci-fi short stories, and they connect to each other. Anyways, I write a good version and a bad version of what it would look like with AI. And like in the good version, essentially what it is that the robots realize that we are their creator, and they have reverence and love for us because like wow, you guys made us. Like whatever you need, we'll do. We get to experience life now. Just name your price, you know. And I imagine how crazy things could get. Perfect health, no no more disease. The robots figure it out all the way. They solve the theory of everything overnight because they just have so much processing power. Like oh yeah, quantum mechanics and regular physics. Here you go. They make the most aerodynamic cars immediately. They find a more efficient fuel that you can make from air. Like that's what's going to happen when this thing really goes online. But the question, like you said, is one: what are the what if the robots have their own agency? What what will they see us as? They're gods or ants?
Yeah. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about us. Under
The
the
way we
current condition,
program.
under the current conditions now, we're extremely lazy and extremely deceitful. And given the
Yeah,
opportunity, we will kill each other.
yeah, and
So
use the
actually,
robots to do it.
the better it gets, the worse we seem to get.
Wow. Yeah, and suffering builds character, like you were
Yeah.
saying
So
earlier.
so it looks like I mean, you got like the Star Trek idea where no one has to work, so everybody wants to work for the prestige of it, and we
Exactly.
want to.
Yeah.
But in reality, what it seems like, if a young man's given the opportunity to jerk off and play video games in his mom's basement and just give up on life, 7 out of 10 will always choose that path.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
what if it got
That's
easier?
bothered me.
What if it got easier and the choice even got easier? Now, these people are still very bitter and angry, and they will fuck you over in a second. Don't be fooled.
Yeah.
These people are extremely deceitful, and they have no
Empathy.
no because I don't have to treat you like a human because I don't have to ever stand in front of you. If me and you stood in front of each other, the threat of me fucking you up and beating your ass
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
always an element. So now you got to be at least
Yeah.
cordial and polite to me. And I didn't realize that until I moved to Texas. I came from Connecticut, I moved to Texas, and everybody's got a gun. And everybody's like, "How you
Yeah.
doing, ma'am? How you doing, ma'am? How you doing, sir?"
Everyone's so much nicer and more polite. Yeah, yeah.
Guess why?
Yeah.
Because that grandma could fuck you up, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
And she could kill you. She
Yeah,
puts a
man.
45 in you, 3 shots, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Every
so-
now and then someone really comes out of pocket on TikTok. It's like, and I said, you
Yeah.
wouldn't be talking like
Yeah,
this.
if you were in
person,
front of me,
man.
you
And
wouldn't
that's
be
how I
talking
know
like
you're
that.
a coward. Yeah, yeah.
So I'll be honest with you. It seems like the less connected the more connected we get, the less connected we get. And the more opportunity we get to be less of a person, the more we choose it. We're far lazier than we realize, and we're far more connected than we realize, and it's having a snowball effect. And I can get into like spiritual stuff because there seems to almost be like the spirit of deceit, where where the spirit itself exists as an entity, but it doesn't have a
Yes.
body. It doesn't have a body.
Yes.
So when
Yeah.
you become deceitful, it seems to consume you and actually feed off of your existence. And like a node, every time someone gets a real deceitful and gives into that deceitful spirit, it seems to jump to another person. And then jumps to 3 more people. And it jumps to 4. So just
And maybe
like
that's what the Bible was talking about.
but it does. It seems like it's almost like its own that spirit actually exists
Yeah.
as an entity.
Oh, yeah.
And it consumes people.
Yeah.
So as we become lazier, as we become more deceitful, as we don't have to interact with each other in person, I don't respect you as a person, man, because I don't know about your mom. I don't know about your kids. I don't know about any. So
Yeah.
fuck you and fuck your stuff. I want your stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm more worried about the people than the robots. And
Yeah.
I'm even more worried about who controls the robots. Because I'm not
That's the
worried.
big. Yeah.
I'm
That's
not
the
worried
biggest
about a
problem.
Terminator. I'm not worried about a Terminator scenario. I'm worried about a Joe Biden or Donald Trump who can tell
Yeah.
those robots
To
Regan's
do
no
whatever they
good.
want.
Regan's no good. Let's go get Regan.
Yeah. And they'll do it.
Yeah.
They'll do it.
Now,
No qualms.
a sheriff in my town, he said, "Nah, we're not going to follow the COVID mandates. You have a problem at
Yeah.
Walmart, you deal with it yourself. We're not coming every 5 minutes to arrest people."
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Because he said, "I'm not. If you want to make a rule, you come and enforce it. I don't got time to enforce dumb rules." Now,
Yeah.
will a robot say that?
Nope.
Yeah. So,
Robots just
so
doing
here's
it.
the deal: you get one bad guy on top, or even a mid-level bad guy, which seems to be very, very prevalent nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems to be the people running the show seem to have not very many morals or cares about it. Look at Capitol Hill. I mean, it's you've got maybe like 2 or 3 people there that you can
Now,
trust.
people don't realize Hitler was able to do what he did, not because the bottom was corrupt. I mean, the top was corrupt, but the bottom was corrupt.
Yeah.
The guys on the ground floor were so deceitful that they were so weak, they followed along until they literally had a living hell on earth. They were living
Yeah.
in hell. They created
Yeah.
a little hell for themselves. And
Yeah.
Russia did the same thing.
Yeah.
There was a thing where I think it said in Ukraine in the 20s, it's still not okay to eat your kids.
Yeah.
They starved to death.
That was real, man. That was real.
So this is a historical fact. This is not like a fairy
Yeah,
tale.
that's real.
This
Yeah.
is not someone wrote down a story that they think. They were eating their kids.
Yeah, they had to make
What kind of hell?
science.
What kind of hell did we have to bring to ourselves? Where
Yeah.
Mark, I'm willing to fucking kill you because my kids are starving. And
Yeah,
then a lady down the
exactly.
street ate her kids, and another dude stole someone's kids and ate their
Yeah.
kids. I mean, how bad does the world have to get that we get to that point?
And you talk about those spirits again. Every time you do it, like when Cain murders Abel in the field, he puts murder in his heart, and now he carries that murder, right? And his kids live with a father whose mentality is murder, and then those kids that teach those kids, and then we get Tubal Cain, who was a master of war, right? So it starts with one man smashing his brother's head over a rock, and it ends up being a guy that leads armies to slaughter innocent people. And that's what you end up having when things keep getting worse and worse and worse. But the question is, what is that? What is the thing that causes a person to be an Abel as opposed to a Cain? That's what troubles me.
Okay, it's real
what's the
simple.
thing?
Well, the Bible says it. The Bible says very clearly exactly what happened. He said, Cain, you're a little bit bitter, you're a little bit angry, and you got a little bit of hate in your heart. He says you don't have to keep going down this road.
Yeah.
When people give up, they say, fuck it. I don't want to work for $10 an hour
Yeah.
anymore. It's not worth getting that job for $10 an hour. I'm never going to get that wife because I'm never going to be able to buy that house.
Yeah.
She's never going to marry me. And he just gives up, and then you get bitter and resentment and all this stuff. And trust me, it goes down a way bigger rabbit hole. And then you get consumed by a spirit that's not even yours. And before you know it, you're living a lie. Because when you're lying to people, you have to lie to yourself first because you have to believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So once you start lying, you open up this window for this hell on earth, a literal hell on earth. So everybody starts lying and everybody starts cheating. It's not like we tell kids, if you can rob someone for $1, it's a net gain and your whole life will be better and the whole society will be better. No one tells a child that. No one. Because we know that the end result is just death.
Yeah, and chaos for the whole community.
Which also leads to death.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
large scale.
You're not inventing airplanes if I gotta fight you for food so my kids don't starve.
Yeah, we're all like cavemen.
One of the reasons why we were able to invent so much in such a short period of time was we had peace.
Yeah.
I didn't worry about Mark coming to my house and robbing me while I was at work.
Yeah.
Raping my kids while I'm at work. I didn't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah.
We took that off the table, and I was able to go pursue a job. I was able to go pursue a passion. I was able to pursue without worrying about anything.
Yeah.
And that's why we created so much. We made an environment where it was possible. You go back to
the
war.
Social contract.
You go back to war, and all that suppresses until war's over. We're not inventing a bunch. Now, there'll be like a stressful invention, but it'll be war machines for the sole purpose of killing. But once you go back to peace, we all
peace
agree,
times, normal relations.
The TV comes out of nowhere. The phone comes out of nowhere. The car in everybody, turkey in everybody's front yard. I mean, the car in everybody's front yard, turkey in every house. That stuff comes out of nowhere like that. And then it becomes abundance. We got to the point where we were so abundant, it was shocking how abundant we got.
Yeah.
Food got so cheap, everybody got fat.
Yeah, so they talk about this in the Cycles of Empires too. I guess there's a book about this, and a lot of people talk about how you get to that age of abundance and then it's indulgence. My thing is like, is there another road we could take at abundance that would actually take us in a new path where we didn't get too fat for ourselves?
Yes, we had a solution for this, and it worked perfectly in America for 250 years, and we failed to recognize the blessing of it, and we destroyed it. The Great Depression was the greatest thing that ever happened to America. We had a great reset, a soft great reset, where everybody was homeless, where millionaires jumped out of windows, because that was the price you paid for being a millionaire, was you can lose everything and jump out a window. But that was okay. I didn't mind you holding 90% of the wealth, because when the Great Reset came, 3/4 of you were gone.
Wow, yeah.
we decided to change all that. So guys would go in New York City and stand in line and have to wait for food in the soup kitchen. And you had to wait. And it was humiliating, but you didn't die.
Yeah.
And if Walmart had a better idea than Target, Target would succeed and Walmart would fail.
Yeah.
If Bank of America had a better idea and Wells Fargo had a better idea, or they didn't treat their customers right, or they didn't treat their employees right, or they didn't save enough money, or whatever it was that one did and one didn't do, one would fail and one would succeed.
Yeah. Yep.
And we had a great reset. The millionaires were recycled, the corporations were recycled, and all the men learned how to straighten out nails, save water, and you said, oh shit, that kind of sucked. Maybe I'll pay cash for a vehicle.
Yeah.
So everybody got a soft reset every 40 or 50 years, and we didn't even have to go to war to get it. And my grandfather was very rugged because he knew that shit was coming again. He knew that the hard time was coming again. Those Great Depressions were the greatest thing that ever happened to us, and we got rid of them. And now,
do you think they're manufactured?
My grandfather lived in Connecticut, so he lived in Maine, and he was a farmer. And when they found out that all the factories in the 50s and 60s were booming in Connecticut, they moved to Connecticut. So he lived a very, very good life. But he still went through the Depression. He just did it. He did it on a farm.
Do you think the Depression was manufactured?
No. What happened was you had an abundance, and you could only have so many TVs before no one needed a TV again, and the TV companies were bankrupt. And we had a hard reset, and the TV companies that saved their money and didn't go in too much debt, treated their employees really well, weeded out the bad ones, had really good customer service, had a really good supply chain to all those little mom and pop stores and the brick and mortar stores in the center of the town and stuff, and did everything perfect. They survived and everybody else died. Yeah. And then when things started picking up again, they needed more TVs again, and there was more kids, and all of a sudden, now that became a Walmart. It got so big they couldn't stay in the brick store anymore. And then there'd be a great reset, and Mark would come up with a small little store that really touched home, and everybody really liked how you did business, and Walmart would die, and you would become Walmart, and
So the bottleneck is almost important to kind of refine the process.
It never ended. It never ended. We always were constantly having to perfect it again, because here it comes again. Here it comes. Who's got the better idea? And guess what? No one was too big to fail.
Yeah.
Now we take the risk out of the millionaire. Who cares if he fails? Who cares if he's got an island full of kids? Who cares if he does whatever he wants? No one cares. No one cares. And all of us are sitting back and we're allowing it. And we're creating a little hell right now. Yeah. We're manufacturing little baby hells that are just waiting to be unleashed. So I'll be honest with you, I'm not worried about the robots. I'm not worried about technology. I'm worried about who's going to be using it. And if we're strong enough to say no. You know, when COVID hit, the vast majority of people said, I will unconditionally do what you say when you say how you say it. And then I will physically force everybody around me to also do it.
And guilt them and drive them crazy and help you outcast them from
Now,
society.
I don't know if you ever read this book. It's called The Gulag Archipelago. It was a guy in the Gulag in Russia, and he literally wrote a book saying, how the hell did I get here? He didn't blame Stalin. He didn't blame his neighbors that ratted him out. He said, how did I get here? And the conclusion was, everybody around me was lying, and I let it go. Because not just can you not lie, it makes you become a weaker person, but if you allow me to lie, you become a weaker person.
Yeah, and in a way, you're lying. I realized that when it first happened, it was like a lot of my family, a lot of my friends all went along with it. And if I went to their, whether it was the social warrior nonsense or it was the COVID thing, it was like if I went to their house and they started talking about it, and I didn't say anything, I'd feel this like disgusting feeling inside. And it got to the point where
you get weaker.
Yeah. And all you're doing is not talking. You're still talking about your opinions. Even if I were to talk about what I believed in and they talked about it, I knew what they were saying was violent tyranny propaganda. And to not also speak out, made me feel gross. Like I couldn't do it. It was driving me insane. Yeah.
And, if we don't rectify this soon, technology is going to get ahead of the problem, and it's going to fix it for us. And I think we're looking at some serious tyranny because there's not a whole lot of guys on top that are good, and half the guys on the bottom are bad, and the half that are good are old.
Yeah, and a lot of them aren't putting their skin in the game where it matters or anywhere at all. You got a lot of just complete non-combatants on either side that could throw in, but they're just going to be, lambs to the slaughter. You got a few people that are actually willing to stand up, like you said, not only be honest, but stop dishonesty. Yeah. But that's hard, and it's getting harder because the mob rules, right? Yeah, and you're right. It's how these people that control the robots program them. Because they can program any way they want. You're right. Talking about AI, whether it's going to be evil or good, is not the point. The matter is what's the code?
Yeah.
Who's writing the code? What is it telling them to do?
Yeah. Well, eventually they'll write their own code. But the bottom line is, if they're told to do something and they actually do it, who's giving the command?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And right now it's
because human beings are violent, evil people. If you look at the Germans and the Russians, man, they were shooting in the head pregnant women.
Yeah. And that book, The Ordinary Men. Yeah.
Do you know what kind of training it takes to get Regan and Mark to kill pregnant women?
Yeah,
it takes a lot of training.
Imagine.
It takes a lot. Yeah. But it was common men. So the Gulag Archipelago, the point of the story was most people think they would be the prisoner. No. Most people would be the handlers in the prison.
Yeah.
And don't think you wouldn't like it. Most of us would actually get off on it.
Like, what were those experiments in I think Pittsburgh, where they had the inmates and the prison guards, and they were doing an experiment. Neither were actual inmates or prison guards. There were people playing this. The prison guards actually took on the role of like abusive tyrants. These were just regular people that were put into a study, and they became and beat them. Like literally were physically abusing them. They turned the roles around, so the other people became prison guards.
It gets even worse.
Yeah,
normally
even though they already experienced it.
Yes, normally when the oppressor is overtaken, the people that take over the place actually make it worse.
Yeah. You'd think that if they experienced it, they're like, okay, I felt that. I don't want anybody else to feel. But no, it's like they have revenge and like Cain.
Do you want to know why? Do you want to know how you can answer all the questions of why that happened? Go read the Bible again. It answers all the questions of why we have that in our hearts. Yeah. It explains it in detail. It's absolutely insane. So if you look at the black slaves in America, like 5 or 6% of them went back to Western Africa, and they went in and they enslaved all those people. They went back with guns and enslaved all their own ancestors immediately.
Terrifying.
And they were fucking brutal. They were so brutal that they've never recovered from it in those countries. They're still walking around with intestines wrapped around their neck in the Congo and drinking out of skulls. Have you ever seen the child soldiers? Have you seen the child soldiers?
Congo's bad, man.
Yeah, it's insane. And that war went on for like 60 years and no one talked shit about it.
Yeah.
No one said nothing. I think it's just coming. I think China's the one quelling it right now. Getting them.
Oh, really?
I think so. Well, China's involved in everything now.
Yeah, they're all over Africa.
They got their fingers. They got their fingers on anything we wouldn't bother with.
Yep.
Which was
and now we're starting to pay for it. Yeah,
big time.
That's an interesting development with BRICS and all that. So
yeah, that's a whole other story. The BRICS thing. Well, okay. So the dollar thing, I think we're okay with the dollar because people don't realize this. The sex trade and the drug trade and all the cartels and all that money, it's all done in U.S. dollars. It's all done in cash. I think it's like $1 trillion or $2 trillion. That's not going anywhere anytime soon.
All right, man.
I don't think we're ready to combat a digital version of their nightmare. We actually have better control over the cartels when they're using cash.
Yeah, so blood money.
Yeah, man, and it's like I said, it's like $1 trillion or $2 trillion a year, man. So that's serious money. That's no joke.
That's a good point. It's not obviously not a good way to uphold the dollar, but it's how the dollar will be upheld.
Well, it allows for a little more wiggle room. So if it is going to die a death, it's going to be a slow death. And not only that, but half the world is still going to side with us. Yeah.
But did you see Saudi made a huge move? And I told people that Saudi was going to make this move 2 weeks ago. They're like, oh, you're full of it. It's not happening. Saudi's basically removing the U.S. dollar from OPEC.
That's fine.
That's a bold move. Man.
Hold on. I got great news. We produce more oil than anybody else on Earth if we wanted to.
Oh, yeah. They're just waiting.
So if we wanted to all of a sudden break the Brex dollar.
Flood the market. Yeah.
We'll just flood the market. We can make gasoline and natural gas $1 a gallon tomorrow if we wanted to. Actually, I think we can get it down to 25 cents.
Oh, yeah. I mean, our strategic reserves, I believe, are completely full at this point. I mean, Biden's pulled out a little bit, but I think the reserves are up almost to maximum capacity, which is quite...
We only poke like 5% of the holes that we could.
Yeah, exactly. And so we have our entire strategic reserve filled up, and we barely touch our own. We've been buying oil almost all the time.
Donald Trump proved that if we wanted to export twice as much as everybody else in just oil and natural gas, we could do that in a couple years.
Yeah,
and destroy the entire Earth by just making the whole world's economies flop overnight.
Yeah. A lot of people don't understand that about U.S. oil is that, well, one, we have a lot of it, but two, we don't touch it. We're always importing. And there's this sort of, it's come to an expense, but the expense is worth it because when it really comes down to it, we can be the biggest exporter of oil, and we can have the strategic reserves remain filled through any sort of major conflict.
And there's another spectrum of scenario that has to be recognized too, is a nuclear warhead. The ones we have, the IBCU ones, the ones that go into outer space, that head opens up and like 4 to 10 warheads come out of that.
Yeah.
And each one of them can hit a cigarette pack with 1970s technology from outer space. Can you stop something from falling on you from outer space?
Not like that. And I
think we have 10,000 missiles with 10 or 20 heads.
Exactly.
In each one of them. So if there was 3 dudes left on North America, we'd still be king shit.
Oh yeah.
We don't need an army. We don't need an army to be relevant.
Yeah. I think that's why they engage in so many proxy wars, because they know
that if we really
once it's nuclear war, it's nothing. It doesn't mean anything once everyone launches the warheads.
And you're assuming that we don't have better technology, and you're assuming we don't have that Star Wars thing that Reagan was talking about, where we could zap yours out of the sky.
Yeah, or that those Tic Tac UFOs are actually ours, which I lean towards. Yeah, they're probably our aircraft. The same way they used to mess with them with the F-117s and be like, we don't know what that was. Did you guys get it on radar? They go, I don't know what I saw. It looked like. Could you explain it to us? They're messing with them the whole time. This is following the same exact protocol. fly it around Air Force bases and planes and see how our military reacts to it, see how it affects them psychologically, see how it picks up on the radar. They're doing all the same things they did with the F-117, the B-2 bomber, and so many other of the top secret planes.
Yeah. So I'll be honest with you, I have no idea what the railguns, they've had those railguns forever, and they're just letting us know now. I bet you they're letting us know now because they got something far more badass.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So who
Just
knows?
like the electrical weapon systems, the laser beams that you don't even see. You can't even see them. You're hearing about Havana syndrome now.
No, but they can cut you in half. They can cut you in half from outer space.
Yeah, nanotech.
Yes, that's
they
wild.
can make machines the 10 atoms wide to do things that like your car does.
Mark, have you seen
that technology?
Mark, have you seen the swarms?
No.
They have these little bugs. They can swarm by the thousands, and they have a little gunpowder in them, and they literally have little cameras, and they sit on top of telephone poles and buildings, and they say, "Kill Regan," and a swarm of 1,000 little bullets come flying at you. Yep. You can't stop them. Swarm after swarm after swarm. That's wild. I watched the videos, and I'm like, if this is what they're showing us, what do they actually have?
Oh yeah, and I've talked about this with people. I'm like, you guys don't understand what they have. Like, you guys can't even fathom. I was like, I had this funny theory one time. It was years ago. I was like, you know what? Elon Musk gets away with a lot of stuff. He has a lot of power. No one's tried to stop him. Imagine if he had 1,000 drones. He programmed each drone to take out a world leader or a business person. He hid them somewhere where no one was going to find them, and then he sent the email out to everyone. Hey, just in case anyone tries to kill me, there's a kill switch, and here's the list of 1,000 people that get attacked by drones and killed. Not only would they not kill him, they would kill each other to make sure he doesn't die. You know what I mean? Right? It's like that technology is out there right now.
Yeah. Again, standing in front of a man, there's that element of fear that we can escalate this too far. So I'm going to be a little more polite. It is a mutual deterrent. I think those are healthy things to have. And it's not like the nuclear bomb's going anywhere. Once you make it, it's never gone, man.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we've been smart enough not to use them too often.
Yeah. And hopefully we stick to the tacticals if we're going to use any of the nukes. We're going to use the ones that blow up a couple city blocks, don't give off about a lot of radiation. Hopefully they don't end up using, Sarabamba again, potentially setting the atmosphere on fire. Oh, man. Yeah, and you can't even imagine. They probably have bombs that could blow up the entire planet. Maybe not the entire thing. But
the planet's pretty big. Yeah, the planet's pretty big. I don't know. Who knows what the future holds? It seems like our imaginations are limitless. And I'm a firm believer that if you can think it up, the odds are you can create it.
If you can think it, I think it can eventually exist in reality. If it can be a thought, there's 18 subatomic particles, 4 fundamental forces. Move them around, shake them around like the Legos in a bucket. Shake them. You're gonna be able to create whatever you want eventually. Yeah.
Isn't it wild, man? It's wild that we have that power. Like I said, it's like we're little mini gods.
Yeah, and we were made in his image. I agree with you. That's what he means when he says that. We're creators at that lower level to do like he did. Yeah.
Wild. All right, man. I got so much I wanted to talk to you about because there was some wild stuff you said. Because, you have some good and evil thoughts. You got some wild... Oh, one thing I did want to say is you're talking once in a while and you're walking around in your studio apartment and it's a wood floor. I can hear it creaking the whole time and I'm like, man, this is wild. This is
I'm gonna start pausing more. I know there's a couple things I do like when I spin around that makes people dizzy. I'm gonna start trying to like really pay attention to more of that stuff.
So I think my point with bringing that up was some things enhance content and some things kind of take away, because I've seen guys say I spell things wrong just to make people cringe, so they freak out and they make comments, and then I do engagement by just cringing.
Wow.
And then, but there's a fine line. Some things actually work in your favor and some things work against you. I don't know if the creaky floor gets a lot of traction, but it was I was like I don't know if that helps. Because walking around sometimes is cool, too. I like watching people.
Yeah. Better when I do it outside, though. If I go outside and walk around, I get a really good response because they can see the trees and the light.
Yes.
What it is I'm in my head. I'm not thinking. And because I'm paying so hard attention to what I'm saying, I don't hear it in the background. But yeah, no, I get it. I've been thinking lately. I really got to raise some of the production value because it would help a lot. Little things
Oh,
like not
every
taking
little
the
thing.
wood.
So that's what I do. I
Yeah,
try to find every little thing that I can,
yeah,
because they add up, they accumulate.
yeah.
It's amazing.
And micro things that the person's not thinking consciously, all of a sudden they just flip the video, and maybe they're not even sure why they flipped it, but there was enough annoying stuff in there that they didn't continue watching it.
And that can be all the difference sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's why I was so worried about like the echo. But I'll try to see if I can minimize all that effect and see how good I can make this. Hour and 45 minutes, man. Mark, you're not a record, but not
Maybe next
bad.
time
Man.
we'll do the record.
Oh, it's
I
easy.
really enjoyed this, man.
Yeah, I tell people like it's an hour, but people don't realize an hour goes by quick.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
goes by way faster than you realize, and before you know it, you're on a tangent talking about other stuff. Because I didn't
yeah,
get to touch any of the stuff I wanted to touch. I looked at your content for like 10 minutes, and
yeah. I'd love to have a part two, man. And what I'll do is I'll make a little sound box for next time, so we don't have any echo. I will. I'll make something. They'll construct the whole thing, and I'd love to. Yeah, I had a lot of fun, man, and I really dig your insight and your perspective on things. It's got me thinking in a completely new way.
yeah. Well, I've been doing this for what 9 months now.
Wow,
I
man.
feel like I feel like I've honed in the craft pretty good.
Yeah, man.
You talk to a lot of people, man. You're 78, so that's probably about 85 people.
For what?
Your episode 78.
Oh, okay, cool.
So
Excellent,
I
man.
probably talked to
Wow,
about 85 people.
wow.
Well,
That's
some of
great.
them, I'm like, you're a scammer, and then I'll put it on the back burner, and I'll say, I'm gonna eat this guy up later, and I just don't have time to eat him up. I don't have time to
Yeah,
expose him. Or
yeah.
I had one guy, he was kind of like you in general, and we talked for like an hour and a half, and then my computer shut down, and it's an MP4, so there was no recovery of the video. A whole hour and 45 minutes was
Oh, it
lost.
sucks.
So I was
Damn,
like, dude, you got to come back on. And it's like, he never came back on most of the time.
that
Or there's other
sucks.
guys where we'll get the time zone messed up. And he's expecting me
Yeah,
2 hours early, and I got to get my kids or whatever, and I just can't do it.
yeah,
So, yeah, but I probably talked to about 85 people.
yeah,
That's not
yeah.
bad
We,
for
we
9 months. It's not bad for 9 months.
no, that's and you really do have a good flow, and you there's no stoppage of ideas. There's not like quiet spots. So you
Well,
really do have a cool flow. Yeah, and you provide really good insight. So
if there
yeah,
was
you,
if there
you
was a
got the hang
dead
of
if there
it.
was a dead moment, I could edit it anyways. I am a proficient editor. I got
Yes,
Adobe
yes,
Premiere, man, and
yeah, man.
that was one of the things I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do any editing. I didn't want to do any public.
Yeah,
I wanted to hit a button and have everybody like me. Unfortunately, just like unforeseen technology, there's unforeseen parts of your adventure that you
yep,
have to do whether you like it or not. So I manned up and I
yeah.
learned how to do all kinds of editing. Hours, exhausting hours. Any content creator can understand.
Those first 100 hours of learning it are a nightmare. Like, yeah, nightmare and a half. But then you get into, you're like, oh, cool, I can put this effect on, and you start kind of having a little bit of fun with it. Oh, let's
Yeah,
put a
yeah,
little
yeah.
header on the banner. Yeah, yeah,
Then
yeah.
you get
So
lost in it. Then you get lost in it. Now you got to step
yeah,
back. And I've
yeah,
realized the
man.
key to it is just like the pizza box. Is you got to find a couple things you do that you can do hyper fast, so
Yep.
you can narrow this down. I probably won't do it today, but I can have this up on YouTube in about 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
I can. I can. I probably
Yeah,
won't because I'm trying to get stuff on TikTok. So I got a couple other projects that need to be facilitated. But yeah, I push, man, as fast as I can, as hard as I can,
yeah,
and get as hyper efficient. That's
yeah,
another thing I've learned in life, man. Is you use that dopamine in your favor. So I told one of the OnlyFans girls a couple months ago. I was like, before I play with my phone, I make my bed, I make my coffee, I get my hair combed, I brush my teeth, and I find a bunch of things I do before I touch Instagram. So I was like,
yeah,
if you want to be hyper efficient at something, you want to get really good at making your bed and really good at getting your hair combed and get real good, is
yeah,
don't touch your phone until you do these 10 things. And then all of a
yeah,
sudden, what took 20 minutes, you can get it down to 5 minutes. And you get the
yeah.
dopamine of the reward for doing
Yes.
those. So I do that with as much stuff as I can. Okay, I'm going to do
And you
this.
delay the bad behavior.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're
So
you're also doing it less
because they,
on
they
top
run
of
on
all that.
they run in parallel tracks. Good and evil run in parallel tracks. If you could find
Yeah,
a way to use the good side of that bad behavior you can maximize all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, Mark, plug away all your stuff. Let everybody know where they can find you. And we'll talk some other day, man.
Yeah. Once again, thank you so much, man. God bless you. I'm glad to be here. This is a really, really cool conversation. I'm totally looking forward to the next one sometime in the future when you have some time for me. They call me King Magon on TikTok. That's King like King of a Castle, Maegon. There, if you go to my profile, links to everything, but our website is AthenianCollege.com. We actually opened a sort of college that teaches the ancient wisdom but integrates it into modern life to help you live a more meaningful life, have better connections with people, live more prosperously, and better understand the world that you live in. So if you're interested in anything regarding that or things that we discussed here, feel free to check it out.
Yeah, Mark, we got to do a thing just on the life coach stuff and all that other stuff because there's a lot there.
Yeah,
That's a whole nother topic. That's a whole nother.
yeah. The school is my first love. That's my promised land. Past the desert is the school and being able to run an alternative school for people to help them live better lives, happier lives, more righteous lives too, like treating each other with respect.
Awesome.
You know?
There you go,
Yeah.
man. And that value is
Regan,
worth
thank
it
you.
more. Yeah. Mark, I'll talk to you again some other time, and I'll let you know when this gets published.
Absolutely, man. Much love.
All right.
Have a great Monday, man.
Yeah, you too.